Off the coast of Croatia, surrounded by some of the bluest waters in the Adriatic Sea, lies the island of Sholta. From a distance, it looks like a place built for postcards: calm bays, pale cliffs, olive trees scattered along the hillsides, and quiet fishing boats drifting in turquoise water. Tourists describe it as peaceful. Locals describe it as beautiful. Sailors describe it as one of the most relaxing places on Earth. But if you stay long enough, you will eventually hear something different, not from the tour guides, not from the vacation brochures, but from the older islanders, the fishermen, the divers, the people whose families have lived on Sholta for generations. There is one place they don't like to talk about, a place they avoid even on perfect days, a bay with a strange, heavy name, Poganica. At first, the word means nothing to visitors. But in Croatian, Poganica carries a dark suggestion. Something evil, something cursed, something to be avoided. If you ask why, islanders rarely give a clear answer. They'll shrug. They'll say it's just a bad place. They'll tell you the water there feels wrong, the wind changes suddenly, and the silence is thicker than it should be. But the real reason sits beneath the surface, an underwater cave system with a reputation so dangerous that even experienced divers approach it with caution. A cave where visibility can disappear instantly, where the walls twist in unexpected directions, where the wrong turn doesn't just get you lost, it traps you. In September of 2002, that cave turned from a local warning into an international mystery. A man went into the cave for a night dive and never returned. A trained police diver entered after him and never surfaced again. And when the missing diver was finally found, 54 meters below the surface, he was still wearing his dive gear, but there was a knife buried in his chest. The investigation that followed would confuse experts, divide professionals, and raise one terrifying question. What really happened in the Poganica Bay Cave? To understand the answer, we must begin on a quiet September night when everything felt normal until it suddenly wasn't. It was Tuesday, September 10th, 2002. A small group was sailing along the Adriatic, enjoying calm weather and clear skies. They had stopped in Poganica Bay to relax, have dinner, and enjoy drinks under the warm night air. Among them was a 31-year-old man identified only as MK. He had been born in Germany, but was now a naturalized Croatian citizen. He worked as a cook, he was physically fit, he enjoyed diving. But he was not a professional diver, just someone with basic training and limited experience. Around 9 p.m., several members of the group decided to go for a night dive. The water was warm, 24 degrees Celsius. Visibility near the surface was good, nothing seemed threatening. They slipped into the water and swam away from the boat. On board, a few people remained behind. 3 crew members, the captain sleeping in his cabin, and MK. For about 15 minutes he stayed on deck, and then, whether from curiosity, boredom, the influence of alcohol, or simply a desire to join the others, he decided to dive too. At 9:15 p.m. he entered the water. He wore a neoprene wetsuit, a working dive computer, a 15-liter air tank pressurized to 200 bar, a flashlight, fins and standard scuba equipment. On the surface, the night felt peaceful. But the moment he descended, everything changed. The entrance of the cave sits at around 9 meters. It begins as a 2-meter-wide funnel, narrow, dark, and gradually sloping downward. For an inexperienced diver, it is already an intimidating passageway. But once inside, things become far more dangerous. The floor is covered in fine silt, a powdery layer of dust and sand that can be kicked up with a single careless fin movement. Once disturbed, the silt rises into a thick fog that hangs in the water, scattering light in every direction and reducing visibility to nearly zero. At around 15 meters, the cave splits into 2 galleries, one shallow, one deep. The deeper gallery drops dramatically, reaching 57 meters, with a straight vertical fall from 35 meters to 50 meters in one line. This is not a place for beginners. It is a place where even professionals move slowly, deliberately, and with absolute awareness of every breath they take. But MK, despite limited training and despite having alcohol in his system, went straight toward the deep gallery. He descended quickly. The deeper he went, the colder the water became, dropping 10 degrees to around 14 degrees. By the time he reached the bottom of the chamber at 50 meters, the environment would have felt alien, silent, black, cold, and completely cut off from the world above. Moments later, he began to ascend again. Everything still looked normal on his dive computer, but when he reached the split between the deep and shallow galleries, he made a crucial mistake. He turned toward the shallow gallery, thinking it was the exit. Divers familiar with the cave say the entrances look nearly identical from inside. In good visibility, you must still know the cave's layout very well. In bad visibility, or with disturbed silt, the mistake becomes almost unavoidable. Once he swam into the shallow gallery, the labyrinth swallowed him. His dive computer showed rapid depth changes, up, down, up again. A classic sign of a diver searching blindly for the exit. He now had complex tunnel structure, poor visibility, rising panic, the effects of alcohol, possible nitrogen narcosis, and a limited air supply, all working against him. Meanwhile, above the surface, the other divers returned to the boat around 10:30 p.m. They immediately realized something was wrong. Two of them went back into the water to search for him. They looked for over an hour. Nothing. By 11:41 p.m., they surfaced again, exhausted and empty-handed. With the amount of air MK had taken, they knew the truth. Unless he had found an air pocket in the cave, he was already out of air. At 12:15 a.m., they called the police. And when the police divers arrived the next morning, the disaster that had claimed one life was about to claim another. By early morning, two experienced police divers from Split arrived at the scene. These were not recreational divers. These were professionals trained for cave environments, rescue operations, and dangerous underwater missions. They prepared their gear carefully. They tied themselves together with a safety line, a standard procedure for low-visibility cave search, and they entered the water. They descended to the cave entrance at 9 meters and swam slowly along the dark corridor. Everything seemed under control, until they reached the split between the two galleries. Something went wrong. To this day, investigators don't know exactly how it happened. Maybe visibility dropped, maybe silt was disturbed, maybe a sudden movement caused confusion in the dark. But somewhere in those tunnels, one of the police divers let go of the line. In a cave like Poganica, losing the line is almost equivalent to a death sentence. The tunnels branch unpredictably. Every direction looks the same. Your flashlight beam reflects off suspended particles, turning the cave into an endless swirl of brown fog. His partner felt the tension vanish. Instantly he knew what that meant. He was now alone in the cave with no guarantee he could find his way back to the exit, and his partner lost in the darkness. He tried to search, but searching blindly only increases the chance of becoming trapped too. His air supply was dropping rapidly. He had to choose between staying to search and risking his own life, or trying to escape before his tank ran dry. He chose survival, barely. He found the exit funnel and shot upward, running out of air. In his panic, he skipped every decompression stop, a decision that caused severe decompression sickness the moment he reached the surface. As emergency teams rushed to treat him, everyone realized what the situation had become. 2 divers missing, 1 diver critically ill, an MKS location still completely unknown. Hours later, the body of the missing police diver was found at around 24 meters, trapped in the shallow gallery. The same maze where MK had disappeared. But MK was nowhere. At this point, fear began to shift into something else, confusion. Because when they finally found him, nothing about the scene made sense. Divers searching the deep gallery reached the bottom of the cave around 54 meters. There, they found MK. He was lying still on the cave floor. He was wearing full scuba gear, but his mask had been removed. His regulator was no longer in his mouth, and in his chest, on the left side. Between the sternum and the nipple, there was a knife. This instantly changed everything. The scene was now a possible homicide. Divers recovered his body, brought up his equipment, and collected the knife. While removing his gear, the knife had been accidentally pulled out, but it was quickly retrieved. Investigators treated the boat like a crime scene. They collected all scuba tanks, all regulators, all dive computers, multiple knives from the boat, blood samples from everyone on board, a mysterious reddish stain found on the deck. 2 of the crew members failed polygraph tests, specifically reacting to the words knife and blood. They had no idea that a knife had been found in MK's chest. Investigators now had a series of possibilities. Murder on the boat, before the dive, murder underwater during the dive, a staged dive profile, a confrontation with rescuers, accidental stabbing from panic, suicide. The autopsy added more clues. The stab wound was 11 centimeters deep. It punctured the aorta. Water was found in the lungs, showing MK inhaled water shortly after being stabbed. His blood alcohol level was 0.14. There were no signs of struggle. His ears and sinuses were intact, meaning he wasn't stabbed before descending. Meanwhile, forensic experts tested all dive computers in a high-pressure chamber. All were functioning perfectly. None had been tampered with. The recorded dive profile was accurate. That dive profile was the key. And once investigators studied it from beginning to end, they realized something shocking. None of the murder scenarios fit the timeline. Not a single one. Which left them with only one remaining possibility. A possibility nobody wanted to believe. The dive computer revealed MK's entire dive in exact detail. It showed his descent to 9 meters, his entrance into the cave, his smooth drop to 50 meters, his immediate ascent, his chaotic movements through the shallow gallery, his return toward the deep section, his pause near the ceiling at around 40 meters, and finally, his slow descent to the bottom, where he stopped moving entirely. When investigators tried to match this profile with each possible scenario, one by one, the theories collapsed. He wasn't stabbed on the boat. There were no internal injuries that would match a pressure descent while wounded. He wasn't murdered underwater by another diver. No diver descended deep enough at the right time. The dive profile wasn't faked. The cave structure made that impossible without obvious depth anomalies. He didn't confront the rescuers. He was already dead long before any rescue diver reached the cave. What remained was the most disturbing explanation of all. MK stabbed himself. Forensic experts concluded that in his final minutes, he was lost, disoriented, affected by alcohol, affected by nitrogen narcosis, nearly out of air, deep underground in total darkness, without any realistic chance of escape. At about 40 meters, he paused, likely realizing he couldn't make it out alive. Experts theorized that he may have believed that drowning would be slow, painful, and terrifying. So he chose a quicker death. After stabbing himself, he inhaled water, and his body drifted downward. Military divers initially rejected the idea, calling it unrealistic. But forensic evidence was overwhelming. The reddish stain on the boat turned out to be paint, not blood. The polygraph reactions were false alarms. None of the divers were connected to the injury. And the dive computer timeline made murder impossible. In the end, MK's death was officially ruled a suicide, triggered by panic, alcohol disorientation, and the extreme environment. 2 lives were lost in that cave, one diver who entered unprepared, and one police diver who tried to bring him home. And for the people of Sholta, this tragedy confirmed what they had always believed. Some places look like paradise, but are anything but. And Poganica Bay remains one of those places, silent, beautiful, deadly, and forever marked by what happened there.